an event in which we promote some dialogue on a specific theme here in Brussels, additionally also by the chapel, that we thank very, very much for like the support and the debate collaboration. So, for those who don't know me, I'm Sara Sechi, and I'm the executive secretary of Don Bosco International. That is the organization that represents the salvation of Don Bosco before the EU, and we try to advocate for our congregation and networks here in Brussels. The salvation of Don Bosco, they provide quality education and vocational training, as well as social services now in 137 countries around the world, and we are based on a preventive system. So we believe in young people, we believe in their good hearts, they believe in their potential, and we believe that through education and formation we can empower them to give them dignity and a life according to their desire and vocation. And we are really committed to work with them. And for this year, we thought to promote a dialogue and a moment of reunion between faith-based actors. We have here Alberto Ares, Regional Director of the Jesuit Refugee Service Europe, and the European networks of VET providers, so vocational training providers. Why? Because when it comes to people, especially in the field of migration, sometimes we forget that in Europe and beyond we already have structure in place that provide a first service in which we meet them when they arrive to our countries, and then some other structure that can accompany them in their formation. So I really thank my colleagues and the experts to be here with us and to join for this dialogue. We know that Europe is facing challenging moments. We are facing polarizations in idea, and migration is one of the fields that very often is instrumentalized with a negative narrative, in which we tend to forget the human dimension. Then we face at the same time shortages due to the demographic challenges that we have, shortages of skills and professional figures. And we know, my colleagues, especially all of them, they know that the institutions, the European institution, especially the Commission, is investing a lot in vocational training to try to compensate the gap, the skill gap that we have. But we are really willing to advocate for an holistic approach to fulfill this gap, to guarantee the dignity and the human rights in the process, especially to guarantee a more cohesion Europe of tomorrow, made of the young people of today. So that's what sometimes we forget, no? And we thought about a panel discussion in which I would encourage my colleagues and speakers to try to guide us in this reflection among a Europe that is still based on human rights and cannot give up on them, a Europe that is facing challenging in dialoguing with the private sector and it needs like new solutions for the training and formation of people. So I will start with the first question directed to Piero Fabris, that is my colleague that joining us from Italy. He is the executive director of Don Bosco Tech Europe, that is the organization that coordinates the Salesian vocational training center in 22 countries in Europe and Mediterranean area. We have 211 centers that they provide vocational training for more than 86,000 learners. So Piero, thank you to be here, to accept our invitation, and to accompany me in this trip to Brussels for meeting the institutions and our friends and colleagues. So we, like Don Bosco, the Salesian of Don Bosco, they represent a hybrid entity. We are at the same time a faith-based actor, but also a training provider at a global scale. So many of our young people that are attending our courses or our training, and they are part of our projects, they have a migratory background. And this is the key theme of this discussion today. Is there an innovative element in the Salesian approach that facilitates the social integration of these young people in our society? And if yes, what is this and how it's implemented?
Yes, thank you, Sara. The Salesian approach is fundamentally innovative, or at least maybe today we can say that the Salesian approach got more than a century, but still innovative today for this kind of issues, because it's merging education, social inclusion, and faith-based values to address the individual needs of young people, and particularly those with migratory backgrounds. The cornerstone of this approach lies in the preventive system of Don Bosco, which is built by three pillars: the reason, the religion, and the loving kindness. I can resume in 4 points the basis about the preventive system. And the first, for sure, is the holistic education that the Salesian of Don Bosco propose. Salesian training doesn't just focus on technical or professional skills, because we are very focused on life skills. We want to promote an approach for good Christians and upright citizens. So the life skills is something very important for Salesians, because include all the social skills and the social inclusion that our countries and all over the world needs today. So not only what is technical or professional. The second point is the mentorship and the trust, because each young person is seen as unique in our centers, in our schools. Our educators, our trainers, our staff, Don Bosco Tech Europe, as a Mediterranean-based network, Europe, Northern Africa, and Middle East, have inside more than 7,000 persons working with our youngsters that are more than 80,000. And our educators serve as mentors before as trainers or teachers. They building trust, they building understanding of the personal experiences. I am used to say that before loving a profession or before loving a technical subject, you have to love the passion that your teacher gives to you. So it's very, very important for us, this kind of approach of mentorship and trust, because this approach can break down the barriers that sometimes the sons of migration, sons and daughters of migration could have here in Europe. On the third point is the cultural mediation. With the Salesians of Don Bosco, we are present in 137 countries all over the world. So we have an intercultural dialogue that is continuous, and through workshops and community projects and cooperation with the other authorities and institutions, public and both private, we are working to provide to a cultural mediation between all over the seas. The last point is the vocational training with purpose. So beyond offering employable skills, our training centers partner with industries will provide opportunities and engagement for our youngsters inside industries with a cultural approach that has to be inclusive for our youngsters. So, in conclusion, I can tell that the Salesian approach integrates a lot of principles, integrates the initiative of a community, the social entrepreneurship project, because in the VET world, we know that a great percentual of our youngsters will be the entrepreneur of tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So it's something very, very important for our society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Piero. I think you address like elements that we are still discussing in Europe, how to heal somehow, no? The trust, how to improve culture, mediation, and I'm happy that you already like touched these key points. So my second question will be for Theodore. Grassos, Secretary General of the European Association of Institutes for Vocational Training, that advocate for quality vets, advocated for more than 600 vet centers, university organizations in Europe and beyond. We have good collaboration with the EVBB, and I would like now to bring the point of view in the relationship with the collaboration with the private sector. So we know that a key step in vocational training is the post-training. And for example, the accompaniment of the student or the learner in apprenticeship and to access the world of work. So this means to have a good or at least communicative dialogue with the enterprises. Due to the shortage of professionals in Europe, enterprises seem to be willing to invest more to attract new talents from new countries. So what does the dialogue between the vet networks and the private sector look like in these moments of need? And are companies open to a more inclusive system, an environment that responds for the needs of third country nationals? So what are the main difficulties, if there are any, that the enterprises and private sector are facing in that?
Thank you very much. I would start from how we collaborate with the private sector. What we have done is that we have a seat. I'm also the vice president of CRPME, which is European Entrepreneurs. And why did we choose that to be? Because we really wanted to have a direct dialogue with the businesses so that we can exchange their views and understand what actually they need in terms of skills and people. And then it comes to the word staff shortages, that is very common all over Europe at the moment. And then you have the challenge of how do I bring in new talents in my business without jeopardizing the development of third countries. Because if I bring in all the youth and all the talents, let's say from Africa, from sub-Saharan Africa, I actually jeopardize the development of their country. So it is something that we do not want. Therefore, on the one side, we need to really understand what are the limitations and what should be the levels of transfer of people and acquisition of talents in the European Union. And we should go there and invest there in training and not bring them here in order to train them here and make them 100% dependent of the European system. This is the one thing. The other thing that you have are a lot of challenges. So what are the challenges? First of all, you have legal challenges. We have, in example with Don Bosco, we are starting the sponsorship in order to train people and support people in order to be trained and also to come to Europe for a few months in order to get trained at vet schools of our network. And it took us a year only to design, and another 4 or 5 months to convince the governments of the receiving countries to issue visas to students, because they think that they will disappear once they put their steps on European ground. So if we have these perceptions and these legal systems that do not allow actually people to come and go whenever they want, you are actually supporting illegal migration. This is also very bad, because people should have the opportunity to come here for a few months, for a year, for a couple of years, to see how we work, the way of working, then have the opportunity to go back and actually use their skills in order to develop more the countries where they come from. And finally, I think that the solution here would be the establishment of a European visa, where actually whenever you would like to allow a student to come over, there would be a process, even through a European program where we face so many challenges, there would be the opportunity for them to come over without having to beg, and I mean that, to beg. I have made so many calls personally in order to bring people to Greece, where I come from, to beg every minister or every ambassador to grant visas for people who actually just want to come for a couple of months and go back. So there are challenges, and I just wanted to say that it is not very clear, and we are not very ready to collaborate with the businesses in order to bring in staff, but also retain people there.
Yes, thank you so much, Theodore. I think like you also touch a very crucial point that we share in the issues and in the challenge when we want to implement this kind of project, that is also the dialogue with the institution, not only, but also with the diplomacy. That is key. Yeah. And we are working on that, and I think we can share them with best practices also in the future. And now I would like to turn to Giulia Mestino, that is the Secretary General of the European Vocational Training Association, that represents vet providers in Europe. Theodore brought the point of view, the more external dimension compared to the EU, but actually we are wondering then what we can do in our local reality for vet providers in Europe. So we see the European Union is investing in project scheme able to create new legal pathways. And as a representative of European Vet Network, what suggestion would you give to local vet providers and centers wishing to develop such projects? Could we perhaps partner our centers with social organizations that take care of the community integration of the incoming people here in Europe?
Thank you. And before starting, I would like to thank you, Sara, and the Bosco International for this invitation to participate in your celebration. And I also would like to take the occasion to convey a message from our president, Georgios Brissa, that is also the director of ENAIP, an organization that is very close to the world of Don Bosco in Italy. To give you a little bit of inputs from our side, migration and inclusion of migrants and refugees have always been one of the most pressing challenges in the European Union, and they still are, unfortunately, I would say. And we also know that vocational education and system can play a key role in integrating migrants and equipping them with skills, with qualifications, and also introducing them into the labor market. We know now more than ever, due to the challenges that you have already recalled in your introduction, also what was pointed by the Draghi report about the European competitiveness, that migration could be one of the solution to the aging workforce that we are going to face, that we are already facing in Europe. Again, the European Union has put a lot of efforts from the policy level already, And there are many recommendations, like for example, the Council recommendation on that that was drafted in 2020, the Osnabrück Declaration. These are all policy documents we participated as VET providers, so we have provided our inputs to the European institutions. In these documents, there is already a stress on the need of making vocational education and training inclusive and adaptable also for migrants and refugees. So what I would like to provide you with today is some practical examples on how VET providers can actually play a key role in this dynamic of integration and can support the inclusion by partnering together with other organizations. Actually, this is something that has been, is actually very let's say, fostered by the European institutions. If we look at funding programs, we always see that it is promoted as a strong multidimensional cooperation in delivering solutions, products for improving our educational system. But here I have three practical examples that I want to share with you. First of all, an example that comes from one member of our organization, an historical member from France, AFPA, the French Agency for Adult Education. They have put in place a program that is called HOPE. So you have already a very promising title for this program. It's actually an initiative that they offer to newly arrived migrants, and it foresees a comprehensive pathway to employment. And alongside language courses, but also provision of technical skills, work experiences that ensure the participants to gain skills and qualifications that are needed to secure jobs. They also provide housing and food subsistence, and as well social integration support. So this is a great example of how local VET provider can provide a 360-degree approach to support migrants in their first dynamics of integration. Another point that I want to stress here is the importance of building strong partnerships with social organizations. We know that NGOs, social enterprises are already supporting migrants, offering language training, offering mentoring, like Piero was saying before. And we have also had opportunities to visit directly this kind of context in the framework of a project that we are involved in, and it's called BASIC, that focuses on the use of vacant spaces as hubs for education. We saw migrants involved in educational activities where they don't only get skills, but they also have the opportunity to start dynamics of integration. And last but not least, the use of EU funding opportunities, because there are funding opportunities, and I'm not only referring to Erasmus+, I'm not only referring to the European Social Fund Plus, but also to other funding opportunities that can be used in a more transversal way. Like, for example, the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund, short for AMIF, that also foresees some actions that are more referring to education and training. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia, for the insights and also like the practical point of view brought from one of your members, and also like to promote this kind of like collaborative approach, no, from the institution that are also like investing in that. And now I would like to stress a faith-based point of view, but more than this, I would say like a human rights-based one, no? And I refer to Alberto Ares, that is the regional director, as I say, of the Jesuit Refugee Service Europe. That is the network that accompany, advocate for and with refugees in 23 European countries. I would like to address the first elephant in the room. So Today we are witnessing opposing trends in Europe. On the one hand, more investment in legal pathways and migration, as also Julia stressed, to attract more professionals. In the other hand, increased border controls and the instrumentalization of the narrative on migration. Such policies, they raise ethical issues, ethical questions that challenge the human rights-based system on which the European Union is founded. And perhaps the question is a bit obvious, but it arises to me very often as well. Is there a way to reconcile the needs of today's Europe and the human rights of people who are already here in our union, or they are just out of our borders? And what, in your opinion, according to your experience, are the biggest limits in the European integration system when it comes to people with a migratory background?
Thank you, Sara, for this easy question. Thank you, first of all, Sara, for the invitation, to have the opportunity also to be here with our companions and with our friends of the Chapel from Europe, Ben, Sabina, and it's also great to feel the support also to other friends and partners in our mission, also here. You are raising one of the questions when we were talking, the last weeks, that it's bringing probably one of the elements, especially in our current situation, in Europe. We can see really this dichotomy that you were expressing also in your question. There is an increasing investment in legal migration pathways. Our companies were also raising these things to attract skilled people. There is also this kind of ethical question also that bring to us. And there is also this tightening of border controls and a growing narrative that stigmatizes, I think, not only irregular migration, but I think it's kind of spreading a little bit more and brings a lot of, I would say, ethical questions. For me, and it's also kind of your question, is how to balance this, I would say, European needs, kind of economic thing. Population is kind of this melting pot of different elements, and human rights, our values, it's not a faith-based thing, but it's kind of what are the main elements, the main values that all of us share, especially in our European Union. Well, first of all, I think try to balance these economic needs and human rights. I think we need to propose really policies that can create, I don't know if I always like to say this, but these win-win situations, that can bring migrants or skills that we need, but also that they can be developed in our context, in our communities, in our families, while ensure rights and protection of rights. Some element that for me is also important is especially that the new Pact on migration and refugees is not probably having really on the focus, it's on integration, and we all know more or less these things. I think we need to identify and address systemic barriers in the European integration system. I will take some of these limits that you asked me also around this. And advocate for more inclusive policies. I think is really something really important. Also, promoting ethical migration narratives, I would say. I think we need to challenge this instrumentalization of narrative around migration and irregular migration. We have heard, especially in the last days, some themes around the world, not only in Europe, that really touch not only our minds but also our hearts. And especially when you really have human values and narratives. and also encourage to have a public discourse that highlights the positive contributions of migrants to our societies. And it's not only economic thing. We can also discuss these things, but yeah, I think some of these elements of my companions talk about the European visa. I would say a little bit also more on regularization. We are spread in many countries in Europe, and we see that there is kind of an unbalanced situation in many places, and what is really difficult not only to be in touch with education, but with many other things, when you don't have like a legal path to really be here, be a kind of a citizen. About the big, I would say, big limits that I see on our integration systems. Being in different countries, we really see that the inconsent, really, we don't feel that there is like consistent policies around all the European members, especially when we talk about integration systems. There are a lot of bureaucratic obstacles. My companions also were talking about this, about recognition and qualification, skills. Really, we face discrimination in labor markets and housing. When some of our companions are calling and they see that they are not from these countries, oh, sorry, we don't have room. Well, sorry to make these like simple examples, but I think can have you this thing. I think also we were talking also about this language and cultural integration support that is, I think, is crucial, and I think it's something that in some places that we are missing, and sometimes even also experience limited access to healthcare and also to educational services, and not only on vocational training. So for me, I would say probably these elements can help us a little bit to have this context and to touch more human and more fit-based thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alberto. I think it was very practical and gave us more like an integral vision on the dimension. And you mentioned, like the inconsistency, so they need to work more to harmonize our policies within also European countries, and the recognition, the validation of skills, not always like, we talk a lot about micro-credential with the Commission and the possibility to recognize also, to have a recognition also of not just like the technical skills, but also of the soft ones. And you touched the point of discrimination in the labor market, and this allowed me to address the second elephant in the room. And this elephant will be for Piero. I would recall what Theodore was saying, mentioned about the interesting insights about the dialogue with the private sector. We have a good example of enterprises that they invest, they have the vision, a more inclusive one, and they try to apply this to respond to their shortages, needs, or professional ones. But despite so many good collaboration and positive one, we still see sometimes that this kind of integration system within the enterprises fails in the company. So the people that they arrive from non-EU countries, at one point they decide to leave not only the job, but all the environment that it comes with us, so even the community in which they were inserted, and this at a great cost, not only financially from the part of the enterprises, but also at a human emotional level for them. So why do you think that this happens, and how do you think we can prevent it?
Yes, so my friends, I will try to not shake too much my hands for two reasons. The first is very simple, because I'm Italian. And the second one is that before this in charge with Don Bosco Tech Europe, I was born as an HR manager in companies, and after in a Salesian center, And for a lot of years, I've worked as a country manager for the relation with the private sector of Salesians in Italy. So I know very well our enterprises in Italy and also in Spain with other church, and now I'm starting knowing more our companies in Europe. And I think that we have a great problem with this kind of elephant. And in Italy, with the language of Don Bosco, we are used to say nascondere I problemi sotto il tappeto. So to hide the problems under the rug. No, we have to put outside the problems, and we have to plan new solutions for new problems. And sometimes I think that companies fail in integration for two main factors. And the first one is the racism and the unconscious bias. These two words maybe sometimes scared us, but we are not to be scared about these words. We have to fight these words and find solutions. And the other point is a lack of preparedness on both sides, but from migrants on one side and companies on the other side. So what can I can suggest is that we, as bed providers, we have to train the migrants in our center, but also the companies. Because sometimes these youngsters don't find an inclusive place to work inside companies. Alberto before says the same thing about the housing. And when I was the HR manager of a Salesian center in the northeast of Italy, and I was looking for jobs for our students, if you was born in a country or in another, for some companies was a problem. And we as the Salesians of Don Bosco start speaking and create a sensibility to this kind of entrepreneurs. Because without this kind of culture, we cannot be able to have this social inclusion. And one point that is very important to explain to the companies, and I think that a lot of hours in my days is exactly this kind of task, is that social inclusion and the life skills comes before the work skills and before the work inclusiveness. And the reason is that Don Bosco said, good Christians, upright citizens. I would like to add life skills. If we got these three kind of things, sure we have good workers. Because work comes after the social inclusion. We have to provide the creation of families, the real integration in our countries. And this is very, very difficult. I think that the first point is breaking down biases, because sometimes we speak about racism, but the racism is something that happens after. We have a lot of biases that we have to handle. Biases as the diversity, the gender, the race. We have a lot of things we are looking for, and we have to look for that because also is the fifth scope of the 2030 agenda. Other point is the inclusive onboarding, and that's why we can teach our companies, because we have to teach in building HR trainings for new workers to be ready to know better the environment of our single country and our single company. Because in this case, we can start with mentorships, real mentorships inside the companies. Because we work on one side with migrants in the vet centers, but sometimes when they start work, all fell down because the interest of our industry is to work.
Yes.
But we have to create policies to have a better accompaniment of our youngsters. And the last point is the two-way training. So while migrants are training for technical roles, the receiving company also needs to be trained. And I was speaking with the Italian government, with the Spanish government in the last months to start create a training for the companies. Because sometimes, you know, also the little entrepreneurs that are so much, sometimes maybe said, oh, it's another cost for us. No, but this is a public policy that is very important for all the community, for all the public society. So our governments or Europe can put something on that, because we can reach a better integration. So let us remember, integration is not the sole responsibility of the migrants. It's a collective responsibility and requires efforts, openness and commitment for all the stakeholders involved.
Thank you so much, Piero. Very, very insightful. And yes, to also stress the idea of to have this collective responsibility and to train both sides, because we never stop to learn, and we need to adapt to what is new and to target also our action on the needs of the people that they have specific vulnerabilities, for example, the case of our youngsters, and the dialogue with the institution and policymakers. So from this, I come to Theodore again. As you mentioned before, like very practical aspects about project implementation, we also face some of them together in our partnerships, especially when it comes in project implemented between EU member states and non-EU countries. So what do you think, from your experience, what do you think and what you would suggest to policymakers to facilitate the implementation of this project?
That's maybe another elephant here.
Yes.
So, well, we were in SAM together.
Yes.
It was actually the first time we were trying to understand how we could work in a structured way to bring students from African countries to European countries. And we had difficulties like, we had partners in Finland, and buying of clothes for African students who were going during the winter to Finland was ineligible. So imagine asking people from Kenya to come to Finland in the winter with -20 and not even paying them to buy a coat or something. And this is a very practical example of what daily problems we are still facing, because unfortunately, although we do have results and we have written the lessons learned in papers, we have presented them, we see that unfortunately the new calls are not helping us in order to do something more structured. The validation process of values, not only African, from whoever is outside the European Union, in order to be able to absorb funds and sign a contract with the European Union is enormous. I would not say discrimination, but the challenging differences that we have when we get to validate a European leader with someone who comes outside the European Union, where in my case it took 1 minute, but for a third country national, even the European services need 4 and 5 documents and 3 and 4 back force in order to accept them, are challenges that we should at some point sit down all together and understand that, okay, we have a wonderful legal system, but it is not unique, it is not the only one, and we need to try to understand that there are different systems who cannot provide you the documentation that you are used to see in the European Union. So this is the first thing I would like to put on the table. We need to open up our mindsets a little bit. On the other side, you have the cultural aspect. We need to understand that not everyone has the same perspective of how I'm doing project management, how I design a curriculum, how I train a teacher, how I bring people from the educational area into the workforce. It is different, because in some countries I have nano enterprises and they are not used to that. So we need to sit down and understand what actually are the needs of the other countries and go and adapt their cultures too. And not only sit here and say, if you are not a European, if you do not think like a Spanish, like an Italian, like a German, you are not welcome in our system. We need to understand that. Paces may be different because we have different cultural backgrounds, understandings. So others are faster in their way of doing things, and you see how quickly they do. But if you do not adapt to the system of the others, I do not really understand why we are doing this kind of projects at the end of the day. Are we just doing them to enforce our way of thinking to the other countries? But isn't that imperialism at the end of the day? So I think we should sit down, have a very honest discussion of how we really would like us to the world to see us. Are we another imperialist, like let's say China and the US when they are giving money? Or would we like the social part of the European Union to be introduced to those countries, but in their context, not in ours? So this will be my intervention.
Thank you so much, Theodore, for the courage to bring also other topic or like not comfortable words that sometimes we are scared to face, as Piero was mentioning. And indeed, I think like, when we face the institution with the results of the project sometimes, and then we see the same things happening again, then we wonder like how the communication can be improved, in that way with them. And now I would like to ask to Giulia something that is very important and relevant also to me. And I'm happy that she's here because EVTA worked a lot on this topic. So when vocational training becomes a tool to facilitate social integration and social inclusion of learners, especially those with a migratory background, a question comes. So for girls and women, are we doing enough? We know that vocational training does traditionally not attract many female talents to different cultural factors. So what do we have to keep in mind when we want to develop projects that aim to include girls and women with this experience in VET, and what could be the role of VET networks in guaranteeing their rights and their needs?
Thank you very much for this question, Sara. If I have to address your very first one, are we doing enough? No, unfortunately, we are not. The thing is that it's not that is not attractive for women, because what we are experiencing today is a polarization of attractiveness. There are female-dominated sectors that attract more women, and male-dominated sectors that attract more men. What we need to fight is this kind of polarization. I want to give you an example. For example, in the tech sector, we encounter a huge talent shortage. Women, and especially women with racial and ethnic minority backgrounds, they encounter huge barriers to enter this kind of sector. Last year, the OCSE has published a report following the work that we have done in the framework of the European and United States Task Force Talent for Growth. It was an initiative established under the Year of Skills. And in this report that was addressing including women and underrepresented groups in technical jobs, the OCSE found that in the EU, only the 18% of ICT specialists are women, and only the 33% of the STEM graduates are women. It highlights also the fact that migrants have increased their presence in Europe's tech sector, but in lower skilled jobs. So this is quite interesting, and it gives you an overview also of what are the key challenges that women are facing, especially women with migration background. Some of them are, for example, cultural and cultural and societal norms, so stereotypes basically that are discouraging them to undertake training in certain fields. But then there are also other challenges like multiple responsibilities. Let's think about childcare. Women are usually taking care of their children, and this can create problems when it comes about undertaking a training program. And there is another important point that was highlighted in the report, which is the lack of role models. So women entering in classes, especially in male-dominated sectors, they do not find other women that are like teaching them, so they do not recognize in a role model. So what networks like EVTA and like the other European networks that are representing vocational education and training should do is trying to address this challenging. So engaging communities, engaging families, supporting the creation of, let's say, networks at the local level that can be helping women in order to make them, to give them the possibility to undertake training. Also, training providers should more adapt training formats, making training more flexible. And for example, what you were saying about micro-credentials, that could be one of the solutions. And also the fact of encouraging the promotion of initiatives that can really give the idea of role models, because there are women that are actively undertaking certain trainings and are becoming models in this sense. And I would like to recall also some initiatives, because I always like to give concrete basis for what I advocate for. For example, another initiative that was developed in France, it's called, that is actually developed in France because it has an annual kind of recurrence, and it's called Trophée Métier pour Elle. It's actually an awarding ceremony that selects among women that are undertaking trainings in male-dominated sector. It selects those women that are performing well. I was a jury in this initiative last year, and I have to admit that I found there women that could really transmit their passion for their new jobs. Like, for example, there was a woman that became from president of an association a bus driver. And she was so enthusiastic about that, and she's even having a blog describing what is her life as a bus driver. These kind of examples are key, and they should be promoted more and more. And this is what networks like EVTA can do. We also organizing study visits that can allow young women to get more familiar with several dimensions and to feel more integrated. We organized one last year in the framework of a project that was aiming at providing long-term unemployed and inactive women the possibility to re-enter the workforce. So they were exposed to some workshops about guidance, career guidance, and also other topics. And finally, the creation of contexts where stakeholders, all different stakeholders, can come together and exchange practices. We are going to launch soon in the framework of another project that is called WITCON, a stakeholder forum to foster the inclusion of women in STEM. So if you're interested, let's stay in touch, and maybe you can also join the discussion about how to promote this, and also to support women in general, but women, especially women with migration background.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julia. I stress the point of the role models because also recalls the mentorship that was mentioned before. And role models, it's something that comes when you are talking about gender equality, gender equity. It's like, yeah, as a young girl, if you don't see like another woman in a position, how you can imagine yourself one day, no? And it builds trust, but it's also built like the confidence to make the step to start a pathways that is not so easy at the beginning or not encouraged in your social environment. So thank you so much for all the suggestions and good practices that you brought, and we are open to continue this discussion. So now, as a final question to Alberto, I would like to ask you a kind of guideline. So because you have like a great experience and long one, so what kind of advice will you give our VET networks here in Europe for us to develop vocational and community integration projects. They are really inclusive. Are there any red lines that would lead to a dangerous trade-off between market needs and the human rights of the people involved? Because sometimes I think, I don't know if it's just my perspective, but we have the fear of navigating some dangerous waves, I will say, not really, but a kind of complicated narrative. So, we can guarantee.
Another easy question. I would say that, well, my companions were addressing different elements, no? That when we see, no, based on our experience on the ground on these 23 countries, serving around 235,000 people every year, no? We experience different elements. I try to make like a kind of 4 of them, no? That I felt, no, also listening to our companions, visiting our countries, also like talking with refugees. And one is, I would say, like try to tailor training programs. It means design curricula that consider the diverse backgrounds and existing skills of migrants. Some of our companions were saying this, no, and incorporate cultural sensitivity, language support into this vocational training. No, I think maybe for all of you it's obvious, but I feel also when I experience these things that is really important. You were mentioning also this also partnership with the local businesses. Our experience also is when we have this connection, and there is some places where there really are local businesses or even big businesses that and a strong commitment. We feel that integration is kind of see more people that connected, on the communities that can succeed. No. Also, this we were mentioning also these holistic support services. Sometimes we just focus on the training. It's not your case, but it means on the things. But what we experience also, especially when some people and say some young people, that mental health services, legal advice, cultural orientation is crucial. You were talking about mentoring, and I think it's really, we feel that it's really important. Probably the last one, maybe not the last, but it means for us that Julia was mentioned also when she was talking about integration also of women, of girls, is the community engagement. Involve local communities integration, I think, is crucial. We have some companions here that we've been talking a lot about community sponsorship, but not only this, we have a network in Europe with the JRS of, we call it communities of hospitality. There are Jesuit communities, families, villages, parishes that sponsor or want to live together with refugees, with migrants, and we experienced that this approach that helped to be rooted from the very beginning in local communities make really a difference. So I would say probably these elements for me, I would say they are really crucial. What are the red lines? I'm making some kind of survey on this with some of our companions, and some of them, they were telling me a kind of guidelines of red lines. Alberto, they told me, really we need to go on exploitation prevention. Like avoid programs that lead to low wage, precarious work without protection. You were mentioning many elements, with this example in Finland, or we can make really other, no discrimination. Probably it's obvious, but we experience like rejection of really sometimes based on origin, religion, migration status, that lead us to kind of, and also promote equal opportunities in access to training and employment. And we know that, especially in some countries or in some contexts, there is not the same queue for everyone. When we try to this. Also something that it was something, well, it's not funny, but it means when I was talking last month with some refugees, they were telling me, Alberto, in some places we are forcing us to do some trainings or to go to some specific sectors, to work, because they say that it's better for us and that the market that they are there. But of course, I think we need to encourage and to help people, but also to respect also autonomy and choice. Individual, I think, aspiration, I think is crucial also. But I think it's obvious, but yes, let me really also raise these things. So.
Thank you so much. Very, very insightful. I like that you stress the community dimension, that it's a common point in all of your intervention, the dialogue and the respect of the freedom of the choice of the person that cannot be subjected completely on the need of the market. So now we have just a couple of minutes for questions. If some of you would like to address our experts here. Yes, Anto.
I can speak out loud, I think it's enough. But we need one group. I'm Antonio, say my name. I want to share an experience. I think maybe it's a question, but more for if everyone wants to respond. I recently watched a movie. It's called, it's out there in the cinema, it's called L'Histoire de Suleiman. I don't know if you guys watch it. L'Histoire de Suleiman. It's the history of Suleiman. He's a writer from Guinea-Conakry working in Paris. And that's really the issue. I mean, when I was watching that movie, which is really, really hard, you see someone of a migrant background, 19 years old, after everything that he has gone through, and then he goes to France, and he has to wait for a certain period of time to have his own interview to see if he's actually a legal migrant or not, and he's not able to work. What is he supposed to do in that period? I mean, where is education in that moment? This is my question. I mean, in such a context where we put things under the gutter, under the rug, we put in that, I think this is a real story because everybody always know now. I mean, if you're on Paul, if you're on the street, these are things that we need to keep in mind also. So, my question is, why is not education included into that process? Why are we not part of that kind of conversation when migrants are alive and they're not 100% still already in the system? So, because those are real lives. I mean, it's really, really, I mean, this is an example from Paris, but I mean, in Europe there are so many things that are the same. So, yeah, this is what, I mean, I was wondering what you do.
Thank you so much, Antonio, also to bring a concrete example from our daily life. Who would like to address? Who would like to start? Let's put him at.
Well, I would like to say that the problem, I think, is that we are in this area in Europe, we are commercializing training. So what would I like to say to that? And I will bring the example of Greece. So the funds for the training of migrants are going to specific NGOs, and then they are going not according to a very structured way so that we help the people for their inclusion and so on and so on. But we receive exactly what you said, and I'm also director at a school in Greece. So I received yesterday an invitation to put migrants in a beauty classroom, even if it's going on. I mean, it was like, just put them wherever you want. It was literally saying that. I was like, what are you talking here? I mean, most probably they don't even speak the language, and you're asking me to put them. And this is where actually the confrontation, the conflicts arise. So in my opinion, the whole structure of how we provide the first training to the people that arrive, the empowerment, the explanation of what are our values, how can you integrate the healthcare system and so on. It is completely wrong because it's commercialized. It's all about making, at the end of the day, a profit or of employing people with a very high salary. So I think if we don't put that aside and start thinking, what actually Don Bosco does, how are we going to really include them in our society, you will have this problem the whole time.
Thank you, Theodore. Completely agree and subscribe what you say.
And
Yes.
if I may, Sara, I think that another big problem is the one related to certification, because we have this already within Europe, especially when it comes about technical training. It's already difficult to certify a person that has skills in a certain field, like for example plumbers that are studying in a certain countries and want to go and live in another country, and they encounter difficulties at the point that they have to go through certain systems. There are countries where this is better organized, and France is one example for the validation of the experiences acquired for skills acquired through the experience. But then there are countries that do not know how to do this, and already we have a problem within Europe. Let's not even imagine what it is about for people coming from outside of Europe. So I think that if we could find a way to overcome problems related to certification and validation, that would be already, let's say, a step forward, a better integration of migrants.
Thank you also to raise this example of this question, because I think it's not only like this element of on the movie, but it's like a daily life for many people, as our companions were saying. For me also, what I have experienced, or we experience on this, is this gap. We see most of us, and sometimes it's like try in some places go and push the people, or my impression, but it's just really is my personal experience. Is in most of these cases, or in the places where we are working, like faith-based organization, in some ways, really sometimes with so many resources, but with some challenges, I try to fill this gap, and I have experienced this in many places. It's true that there are some initiatives in some governments. I can say that, for example, in Spain, it will go. This law started in May, hopefully. A way of reaching residency is around a training path, and also like a kind of a compromise to finish your studies and to get, the residency. But really, there is no, from my experience, so many examples on this. So really, not only this gap is only on I would say on education and training, but access to housing, health system, as you were mentioned, is really, I'd say, a big challenge.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
My mother used to say that you have to speak if you have to add something, or unless you have to shut up. And I think that, in my opinion, Alberto, Giulia, and Theodore speaks about the causes and also solutions. In the solutions point of view from vet centers, we see that after COVID, sometimes we are not working anymore with the most vulnerable ones, because we are used to imagine that in our society, the youngsters inside the vet centers are the first step of vulnerable ones. So you got the street and you got the vet center. With migration, with all that in the last years we are living, there is a new gap inside. There are youngsters that cannot achieve all the training pathway inside the vet centers. And it's a sort of gray area of new youngsters, and we have problems with certification in this case, and so you will have problems with finding a job, but it will be very easy to find a crime after that. This is the great danger we live. And so we work a lot with our parish, with our oratories, but it's not the full solution. So we have to cooperate with institutions to find new solution for new problems.
Thank you. To bring like the preventive system back. Any other question from the public? I know that the topic, it's quite complex, as we have seen, with different challenges, but also good practice from our networks, from our members, from the institutions that somehow they are trying to navigate and to find a solution. I would like just to conclude keeping like some key words and concepts that I really appreciate in this discussion. And one is like promoting and make accessible some good and positive constructive role models through mentorship, through the sharing of the passion for what we do in a way that this passion can be transmitted to the young people, then to achieve the idea of life that they have, to do it like in freedom, to promote cultural mediation, and especially like to not be scared, to address what we feel it's not comfortable, maybe in a more institutional environment, to keep dialogue, to keep and promote a local community approach. And I will finish with the words of Don Bosco that always say, come and visit us. Because you don't need to talk too much. I mean, to reflect, like when you come to our center, but also I'm sure like in your center, in your realities, and you see how things are done, and you talk with the young people, you talk with their family, with their educators. Educators very often, they have experienced the same pathways, so they become their role models. Then you feel the human dimension that you will bring home. Despite whatever you do, whatever like in your daily life, what is your job, but I think we should promote this with policymakers, like to invite them. It's the invitation we have been promoting during these 2 days of meetings. It's like, please, if you are traveling, contact us and we will facilitate your visit to our youngsters. And I will finish this, the listening, like towards they promote to the need of their realities, but to their dreams. It was the Salesian working for this year, the dreams and the hope, because sometimes when we read or we listen to the dreams, that we realize that in the end, we want to have dignity in our life and to very often give a service to the others. So I would like to finish like in this more like positive, hopeful message. I thank my colleagues and friends for the insightful discussion that we will be happy to continue afterwards. Now, if you allow me, I would like to invite you for like a more spiritual and religious celebration of our Don Bosco feast, so feel free to join us. And after the Mass, we will gather together for having some food sharing and continue some discussion downstairs. Downstairs, we will need just like few times, like 5 minutes to arrange and to settle everything. So feel free also to grab some cup of juice, water, whatever you need downstairs, and then to join us again. Okay, thank you so much for being here. I see like many friends, and we are really happy to share this moment with you. Thank you.
Sì,